I'll do that. Alright, hello guys, welcome to the PiG Daily, episode number 110. And today I'm going to be doing a show very different to anything I've talked about before. We're going to be talking about, I guess it's mentality, though I think that word gets overused all the time. Everyone's like doing articles these days about like, oh, competitive mentality or, your sports psychology. We're going to tell you the secret to being the best. And here's like 6 things which champions do, which you can do. Find out on BuzzFeed how to be a better human. I don't know. I basically just want to talk about some thoughts to do with rage and anger in StarCraft especially, and how that affects you and how you can kind of get over that stuff, and how you can use it to your strength. So there's this common thing that goes around, right, where people look up in the StarCraft community a lot towards players like Innovation. Who on the outside is this very calm, icy exterior. This guy who doesn't seem to get fazed by a lot, doesn't look very happy when he wins. He might get like a small smile and that's about it. Doesn't look too upset when he loses either for the most part. And everyone's like, oh, he's so emotionless and this is why he's so good. He can stay like calm in the heat of battle and everything. And I feel like there's like two kind of ranges of people. There's people who are like, I want to be like Innovation, and every single time something shit's happening to me in a game, I'm just gonna like zone it out and I'm just gonna keep playing and just not care about it. And when I win, I'm not even gonna be proud of my wins. I'm just gonna kind of, it's okay, it doesn't mean anything. It's just a win. And then there's like the other school of thought, and it's like players who are just like, fuck everybody up. And they just run into their ladder games like BMing, being like, fuck you. And then just like, as soon as anything bad happens, they just start like raging, like frothing at the mouth, just like, Terran's a piece of shit, Terran's so overpowered. And whenever anyone calls them out on it, they're like, well, I'm just so passionate about the game, I'm so passionate, so I get into it, like, what's wrong with that? And obviously these are two kind of opposite stereotypes, but I do often feel like we kind of think about rage and anger and like kind of staying calm under pressure as like one of these two opposite poles. And I actually think both of them are like not the most useful when it comes to competition. I think they're both very non-ideal. Obviously the rage is pretty self-explanatory. If you're frothing at the mouth, you're not actually, improving that much. You're blaming other things for your losses. You're getting super angry. But likewise on the calm side of things as well, you're kind of, I feel like you're limiting yourself from the full emotional experience. I feel like you don't want to just shut that out. You want to kind of try and channel that. Of course, rage is something which everyone deals with. Everyone that kind of cares about something enough ends up actually feeling. So let's kind of get ourselves in the ragey mood. I literally just Googled a random Avillo clip, so just for your pleasure. Pretty tame as far as Avillo rages go. Nothing too crazy there, but we've seen a lot worse. We've seen a lot of players kind of like screaming at the computer, like smashing their keyboard to pieces, just going crazy. And in StarCraft especially, we have this whole like gentlemanly thing, right, where it's like always say good luck, have fun, always GG. But I do think people take it a bit too far, and people forget that emotion and rage is like the most powerful thing. If you're not feeling anything, if you try to just like zone out that feeling and just ignore it, and you try to like insulate yourself from the experience, I feel like you lose a lot of your fuel. You lose a lot of your impetus for improving. Yes, your ego should be involved when you're playing StarCraft, at least on some level. You want to try and keep it under control, but you want to feel bloody good when you're winning. You want to like harness that feeling. You want to, when you look back and you think about the best games you ever win, and you're just like, that felt damn good. And that's part of your fuel for continuing to play, because you want to experience more games like that. You want to fight really hard from behind and make this comeback you never thought you could make happen, because, you kind of stayed a bit calmer in the face of a bad situation and kept playing it out. So you kind of want to be able to dip into your emotions, your rage, your anger to help you work harder. But you also want to, have that ability to keep it in check and keep playing out of situations where things are going wrong. And this is the reason I was thinking about all of this was because the Australian Open was on the other week. Federer won at 35 years old. I love watching tennis once a year when it's all over Australian television during summer when we have the tournament here. I'm not like a super avid fan. I just kind of watch it, watch like a little bit of Wimbledon or something if it's like on a good time zone, a little bit of the US Open. But Federer is this guy who is always so fascinating to me because you look at him on court, and I'd say from a long time ago, from whenever he started getting super famous and super popular, you'd look at him on court and he'd just have this like calm exterior. People called him the Iceman for a long time. And he just looks super chill no matter what was happening in the game. And, there's always the like Andy Murrays who are just like shouting the whole time and like smashing rackets. And he's always like yelling at his box of coaches and stuff. And then you'd always look at Federer, who's just like so calm in the face of it. And I feel like he had the same aura. Everyone's like, oh my God, he just doesn't feel emotion. He's like innovation. So I was really curious about it. So I looked up a whole bunch of articles and interviews with him going way back to kind of when he was first starting to actually win Grand Slams and tournaments. And there was this interview, and they're asking him, what changed from like 2002 to 2006 when he went from, he had a lot of promise, but wasn't really winning anything, to like, bam, just destroyed Wimbledon like 5 times in a row or something. And he was like, the one decision I made which changed everything was when things were going wrong in a match, when they weren't going the way I wanted to, I just decided to keep playing. He's like, previously, I'd kind of I'd get out of control. Basically, he was describing tilting. He'd be like, I would just kind of keep playing, and I'd just play worse. I'd get angrier. I'd freak out over the fact that things weren't going my way. And he said the one thing that changed is I just decided to keep playing and just keep trying and see if my opponent would make a mistake, see if they'd screw up. And since then, he started making all these incredible comebacks. He started just being so kind of calm because he had this sort of confidence that there's always a chance he could come back. So he started to like delve into that calmer side. But before he did that, you kind of see these old interviews and these old kind of recounts of Federer as a young player, and he's this ragey standard competitor. Any young competitor who really cares about something and is passionate, they're always angry. They're always throwing tantrums. They're breaking rackets. They're going crazy. And it's the same in any competition. Do you guys remember when you were in like, I used to play soccer or football for you guys in Europe. Do you guys remember how there'd always be like one angry kid on your sports team? Or sometimes there'd be 2 or 3, depending on which team. I played a lot of sports growing up. And I was always the kid who, I loved trying hard. I loved running around the field, kind of doing all that stuff. Never practiced properly. Didn't really care about refining my skills. Just like putting in a bunch of effort and running around. But these were the guys who, they'd go and play in like the state teams or like the representative teams, the higher leagues. And they really cared, and they'd get really frustrated with everyone else on the team because they were so competitive, and they'd get really angry when things weren't going their way. And I remember I would always alternate between either being like, whoa, just chill, man, like it's just a game, or being like kind of impressed, because you could tell that anger actually fueled them. And I feel like it's like this for anything you care enough about and you are passionate enough about, you will get angry when things don't go your way. You will get a bit mad. Rage will start to well up inside you. And this is something I never really kind of channeled myself at all until StarCraft, because I just never gave enough shit. So I was always just like, just run around, kick a ball around, Sorry. Yeah, so basically, I just never gave a shit, but there's always those kids who are always better because of that. And it's because they used it as fuel. It's because they cared more, so they tried harder, right? Every time they lost a match because they didn't play well enough, they fucked stuff up, the team fucked stuff up, they would work twice as hard to try and actually, practice harder to make that up later on. So it just kind of got me thinking about this and how really, if you don't care about it, you're never going to have that same impetus. You're never going to have that same drive. Like, you've got to have that. And the real difficult thing is towing that middle ground, right? How do you both have that anger, but then also direct it into a positive direction? How do you stay kind of calm enough without just kind of shutting out the pleasure of the game and the emotion and all of what that brings out in you, that drive, that anger and everything? And that's where things get difficult, because we've seen it so many times where basically it just leads to you're like, yeah, let's embrace that emotion. And sometimes it gets out of control. Sometimes, things just don't go your way and you just can't help but give in to your anger. Give in to your hatred. That's a great clip. I love that one. QXC was actually a guy who worked on his mentality quite a lot. And that's a very famous moment of him smashing his keyboard just because it blew up on Reddit. Because everyone was like, look at him, he's raging. He's a really good famous pro player. Let's all laugh at, him kind of losing it one time. And definitely that's not helpful to like lose your shit like that. But at the same time, I don't think you should be ashamed if you ever do lose your shit like that. It's what you do afterwards, and it's what you do to control it in the future that really defines how you improve as a player, right? And a lot of people feel, I think, like they look at the champion who's got the icy demeanor, the Federer, the innovation, whoever, and they think this guy doesn't feel that. He doesn't feel that anger. And I think that's completely a lie. I think maybe he doesn't feel that fully fledged rage that's like a fucking wildfire that takes over you, and you're just looking for anything to blame, anything to lash out at in anger. But I think they definitely have, at the very least, the seed of that anger. When things aren't going right, they feel that anger. They care about it more than anybody else. They feel it more intensely, I think, than the people who actually just kind of give into their rage and just go crazy. The difference is they're so well trained, they've worked so hard at directing that rage into actually improving and practicing and controlling it. And I feel like the beginnings of that anger and that rage is what, in these intense moments in tournaments, allows players to turn around a bad situation. The number of times there's been an interview after an important match and they've been like, oh, at this point, what was going on? What did you think? And you'll see the pro player be like, well, I actually thought I was really dead at this point. But you never know what's going to happen. So, like things weren't going well. I felt really terrible about what's happening. But I just kept playing. I knew if I did this well. And then suddenly I just won the game. And I was actually really surprised that I won. And, this is something which, because they're able to, they care about it so much, they're able to kind of harness everything they're doing and just keep playing and just keep fighting for it. And they've practiced so bloody hard that they can do that in the face of everything that's going on. And yet there's famous moments where we see players, especially in 1v1 sports, especially in games like StarCraft, you'll see a player just melt down if they can't quite do that. They'll just let the rage overwhelm them sometimes in important moments. And you see them be up 2-0 or 3-0 in a set and then just lose the next bunch of games in a row. Or you'll see them about to win a series and just throw a game in spectacular fashion. And a lot of the time that comes down to them not being able to, control those emotions. They give in way too much to the rage, or they get so nervous and they're afraid of all the emotions they're feeling, the excitement, and they just kind of lock down and stop playing their own game. Of course, one of the most famous moments when we actually saw someone basically just already raging and fuming pretty much every time he got into a match, because his entire practice regimen was based around rage, is Idra. He's one of the most famous guys we saw so many times lose matches where he should have won because of his anger issues, because he couldn't control himself.
By these tanks, but the Mutalisk count is just a little bit too high. Idra now streaming forward with Zerglings, Mutas, everything is overrunning the scores by MMA. Wait, what?
We do have the one, the only.
That's one of the most famous moments in StarCraft, because Idra had the game pretty much won. MMA had accidentally killed his own command center just before that, which took it from hey, this is a pretty good position, you're doing well in this fight, to MMA is dead, you've got this game. But Idra basically assessed it as just being like, well, what any other player would say, this is not amazing, but it's at least an even game. Like, it's not like it's won, but it's even. And he was like, nah, fuck it. Didn't completely steamroll everything in this engagement. Bam, tap out, it's over. And that's because throughout all of his practice, he would let his rage overwhelm him. He'd just, he in this series of videos, everyone loves this Idra in a nutshell video because it's just like him streaming and practicing, and it's him just like raging at every single person, just being like, this game makes me sad, fuck this shit. There was never any attempt to kind of corral and rein in that like anger at the game, and it was just every single time anything went wrong, blame an exterior factor. So whenever it came to these important moments, he was unable to actually, you know, just lock everything down and keep playing through a situation, which even if he was being quite objective, maybe he's like, this situation isn't that great, but he never kept playing from there. He always gave up. I'll never forget a game where he was on 4 base against a 2 base Protoss. I think it was Liquid Hero back in the day, and Hero came in with 2 Warp Prisms. And Hero was so dead. So it was like, he's like, I guess I built a second Warp Prism. And he was just harassing with Charge Lots and 2 Warp Prisms. And he kept, and this is before you had ranged pickup on Warp Prisms, remember? And he basically just kept hitting the 4th and the main base. And these Warp Prisms were going in and out and dancing around the bases. And Hero had like so little economy. He had very little to macro at home. So he was just putting all his focus into microing this. And Idra, because he was so far ahead, he'd done this like, hey, I've just won this game. It's over. And he literally just A-moved his whole army to the 4th and then back to the main. And the 4th and back to the main. So like he'd get to the 4th, the Zealots would pick up. He'd turn around. The Zealots would redrop. The Roaches would come back. They'd pick up. The other Zealots would drop in the main base. And he literally, this happened for like 7 minutes consecutively because Hero was so far behind and it took him that long to actually work it back into a winning position. And I remember sitting at home as a little newbie with like my hands over my mouth, like, but why doesn't he split up his army? I was like, what's happening? And it was just a huge mental block. And obviously this is like the example of what goes wrong no matter how mechanically skilled you are, no matter how smart you are about the game. Your mentality will always underwhelm you. And Idra, I think, is the perfect example of someone who just fed every bit of anger and a rage into this fucking bonfire. It wasn't even a bonfire, it was a wildfire. Like literally every single time he got angry, he just like would go up to the fireplace, fucking kick the log over into his living room and just like set fire to his house. And his like whole mentality, I would visualize as him walking through this burning house with just like no fucks given with that like Idra swagger. I love Idra. Greg was an amazing player. And I think he probably had a much better mentality in Brood War, even though he was quite ragey there as well. But that's definitely something which did slow him down. So I guess it's kind of interesting to look at these examples of people who didn't control their anger at all. But then, like I said, it's also it's important to kind of use it as fuel and direct it in a direction. You don't want to go so far in the opposite that you're just like, I'm trying to think of how to say this, but like shut out that emotion. This is something I keep touching on today, right? Like you don't want to just be like, oh, just no emotion when I win, no emotion when I lose. You still want to feel that emotion. And I actually feel like you want to feel it more. And this is a weird thing, right? Because people look at someone raging and they're like, well, this guy who's like yelling or he's saying the other race is shit. He's clearly feeling this, right? He's feeling the emotion. And I actually think that's complete bullshit. I think whenever you see someone raging, same as whenever you see someone just kind of distancing themselves from feeling anything, I feel like they're just putting up a barrier between themselves and that experience and like having that true experience, right? I feel like when you watch that quiet you watch Federer when he's in a really intense spot and you can see his face. It's easier with regular sports because you've got the camera on their face during the intense moments a lot more, right? Which is why I like talking about Federer. And he's so calm and everyone's like, yeah, he just doesn't feel anything. Like he just knows he's going to come back. And it's like, not really. He knows he's got a chance of coming back, but he's just like getting so mad that shit's not going right. And he's instantly like carefully grabbing those logs and he's like feeding them into this fire of just keep fighting. And he has trained himself to do that over a long, long time. Of every single, keeping that positive mentality of saying, okay, let's do the good luck, have fun. Let's do the handshake. Let's be respectful to my opponents. I remember Federer saying when he was younger, he used to blame his opponents. Like, well, not blame them, but he thought they were terrible people. He's like, when I was younger, every time someone beat me, I thought they were a terrible person and I would hate them. And I would secretly like dwell on these dark thoughts of who is this fucking guy, basically. And he said, as I realized as I went on, it's better to just be a bit happier and, just relax and enjoy yourself. And kind of reading behind the lines there, and this is the same for a lot of pro players, is This idea of stop blaming external factors and letting that rage go away, and instead turn it inwards and say, okay, I lost and I'm angry. I'm going to go train harder. I'm going to go grind the shit out of a build over and over again. I'm going to do this a lot. And the thing is, to actually use it for that is a lot harder than just letting your rage run unbridled. It's actually something where it takes so much, because you need to sit there and you need to think like, I just lost the most important tournament game of my life or something like that. And you need to just sit there and fucking let yourself feel it. And it's the worst possible thing in the world. If you just let yourself rage and get angry, it's easy. It's the easy option out, because you're not letting yourself feel that. You're not remembering and focusing on how important this loss is for you. You're not savoring that moment, and you're just kind of blocking it out and just throwing random shit up for your brain to focus on to distract you from the fact that you are facing your own inadequacies. And that's what StarCraft forces you to face. This is what competition forces you to face. You're not the best in the world. And the thing is, I feel like in almost every single person, there's a part of our ego that honestly just sits there nodding to itself, slapping itself on the back like, you're the fucking boss, man. You're the best human in the fucking world. And even though it's like you objectively ask someone, you say, do you think you're the best in the world? Obviously, no one thinks that. They're never going to say that. But on an unconscious level, we all do think that we're fucking awesome. And whenever we get faced with this stark reality of, I just lost this important moment, it is one of the hardest things to focus on. But the difference between the champions, the best players in the world, is they grab that feeling and they hold on to it. They don't rage. They don't distance themselves from it and say, oh, I'll just stay calm by completely blocking it out and pushing it to the back of my mind. That's the opposite of raging, right? There's players like, let's just not think about it ever again. But they actually hang on to that feeling. They really let themselves feel the absolute fucking despair and sadness that comes with a loss. And then they fucking say, well, this makes me feel terrible. Because it's that moment when you're standing there and you look in the mirror and you see just how fucking, all of your human frailty, all of your weakness. And there is nothing in this world that is more motivating than looking in the mirror and seeing how shit you are as a human. Because we all have so many issues. We're all selfish, weak kind of people, right? We all have these problems. We all like to imagine we're good people, but we all think terrible thoughts. We all do mean shit. We all do selfish shit. And when it comes to competition, we're inadequate. We always fuck up. We break under pressure. We don't execute things we've done 100 times before properly. We'll fuck it up on the 101st try for no reason. Well, what seems like no reason. And this shit is really hard to face. But when you face that, it gives you like the fucking hot coal that you can like shovel into your fucking steam engine, and you can actually practice so hard because it lights a fire under your ass when you realize how inadequate you are, because you suddenly realize like, I'm not what I thought I was. I'm not as good as I thought I was. I want to be better. And the only path to that is to work harder. So I think once you start to realize you have these kind of two choices. One is to either shut out your emotion. One is to let your emotion take control of you. And then on the other side, you've got hang on to that emotion for a little bit, let yourself feel that pain, and then work out that pain by practicing hard. And this goes for everything in life. It's not just StarCraft. Anything you fail at, anything you lose at, you want to not just be like, it's always so hard to face up to something you fucked up at, right? But when you actually, you go and talk to someone you like trust, a partner, a wife, a friend, a parent, and you kind of talk to them about how fucking distraught it makes you feel, and then what it makes you want to do to be better. It's the best feeling in the world once you actually start working towards bettering yourself in that way, because you've suddenly found a way to work out and kind of progress past your weakness. Whereas it's human nature to ignore it and just kind of, you just want to continue being what you are. You want to resist change, and you want to find a way to forget about the fact that you have those shortcomings. So I think that's ultimately what I'm talking about. And I think one of the most inspirational stories from my own life, and I just remembered this the other day, and I used to do kickboxing when I was in high school for a little bit. I was never very good. Really enjoyed it though. Really great, like exercise, and I just enjoyed the physical discipline involved in pushing yourself in that way. I think it was the first time I'd really trained that hard before. And I remember the instructor, I can't even remember his name now. It was so long ago. But I remember him telling us once, because he went to our high school. We were in high school at the time, but he was like probably about 10 years older than us. So it was in, different time periods. And he was like, yeah, I used to go there. And he was telling us how when he went to our school, he was like the piece of shit kid. He was the kid who was always in trouble, fucking selling drugs, doing whatever the fuck he wanted, getting in trouble. I think he got expelled from my school. Basically, he said, he just had like no future. He was just gave no shits, didn't care about anything. And then, when he left school, started to realize how depressing that existence was. He got into fighting, kickboxing, and he just loved it. And he started training really hard because it was the first time he found discipline in his life. And he trained for years and got better and better. And then he was doing really well in all the competitions in Australia. I think he won like a Southeast Asian competition and stuff. I don't know the details of it. But basically, he worked really hard at something, became disciplined from having a very kind of fruitless youth. And then he went to like the biggest championship he was going to be at in Japan. He'd been training for like, I think it was like 6 months, like super hard for this. Obviously, there was years of build up to this moment. And a week before, when he was about to fly out, he broke his wrist in practice. And I remember when he was telling us this, that he was a little bit, emotional about it. He was like, because it had clearly affected him so much. And he was like, it was the worst thing that ever happened to him. For the first time, he'd worked really hard at something over years. He was about to kind of come to this great moment where everything came together. And he broke his wrist. And the doctors basically said it wouldn't be properly like healed and able to fight potentially ever, but definitely not for like many, many months, maybe like a year before he could fight again. And he was just like, life plans out the window. You work so hard at this. And this is one of the hardest things. Like, this is so much worse than just losing a match. And I remember him saying he literally just like locked himself in his room for a week. He was so angry. And he felt like the world is just trying to steal everything he'd worked for away from him. And it just felt so unfair. And he said he was just so angry, he couldn't talk to anyone, he couldn't speak about it. And at the end of a week, because he'd trained so hard and he'd worked so hard, he basically was like, well, fuck. At the end of it, what's going to make me happy? Like, what the fuck can I do? I can't fight. Everything I've trained for is out the window. And he realized, well, you know what? I've actually learned insane discipline from all this practice. I've learned how to do that just to put all of my effort in one direction way more than I ever could imagine myself doing when I was younger. And he was like, well, shit, if I can't fight, what can I do? And he's like, well, maybe I could get like a really sick job or something. And he was like, you know what? It would be cool to be a lawyer. And he basically just like came out of this room at the end of the week and he was like, I'm going to be a lawyer. And he just like, with his terrible high school grades, had to do all these workarounds to like transferring from really shitty schools into better ones to get into a good law degree. And what he was, and then it came to the present day where he was about to graduate law. He was coaching, these big classes of kickboxing, and he'd basically just redirected all of his effort into the one positive thing, which would actually give him progress and make him happy in life. And he didn't compete anymore. He still had a passion for kickboxing, so he loved teaching it. And like, he was like, yeah, so I just found a way to basically ball up all of that rage and anger and emotion, all of that despair. And he just kind of directed that. He fueled it into this fire. This guy with, who got kicked out of high school, had a terrible academic background. And he was like, yep, okay, I'm going to just put all my effort into going becoming, a lawyer, a very fucking academic, hard to do thing. And I remember as a young 16-year-old him telling me that story. And I probably didn't fully get it as much as I do now, I think, now that I'm older. But I remember still being very impressed and just thinking like, holy shit, like even any sort of competition, any sort of physical training where you learn to discipline yourself, you learn to use your emotion as fire, like it's fucking beautiful. You can feed that into any other direction you want and you can really control your own destiny. So I guess that kind of comes to the end of what I wanted to talk about today. I think ultimately to summarize, guys, feel your emotion. Don't try to be an innovation. Don't try to be a Federer. It takes thousands of hours of work to get to that level, but you start step by step. If you're a regular Joe on ladder, how do you start to control your rage? You can start with little things. I actually really, really do like let's just say good luck, have fun at the start of each game. Let's say GG at the end of each game. It's a very small thing, but that's something you hear around the StarCraft community a lot. And it's one of the best things because really what's behind that is the idea of practicing having a good mentality. It's the most basic, easy to do thing where you can still be very angry, and simply going through the motion of typing good game at the end of a game, even when you're a bit angry, it helps you start to direct your focus already into like, all right, let's not just foam at the mouth. Let's go through the motions of being a decent human. And the more you start to do things like that and distance yourself from uncontrollable rage, or just kind of alt F4ing the game and walking away from computer, the more you can handle just being sitting there and absorbing, okay, I lost, that feels terrible. The more you can then start moving in a positive direction, you know, of saying, okay, I lost, why did I lose? How can I improve my build? Let's watch a replay. Let's figure out what I can do better. And everyone's different. So everyone has their own different techniques and methods for doing this. But at the end of the day, it's about how can you find a way to channel and harness that emotion and push it in that positive direction, push it into that for you. And it's really about hanging on to that feeling. I cannot stress enough how much it's about savoring that emotion. And it's so hard when you start out. It takes so long to get used to, but once you get good at savoring that pain, oh, it is the best fuel ever. You know, I'm a big believer that like the best people in this world are the people who've seen shit. The people who've had like abuse or pain in their upbringings. They've come from war-torn countries. Some of the best people I've ever met, because they've been through more hardships in their lives. And I know obviously that does ruin some people. Some people end up terribly tormented and destroyed by hard things in their life. But the ones who come out of it with a positive attitude are like so inspirational, because you always look at them and you're like, holy shit, like how do you stay calm through all this shit? How do you stay positive? And for them, it'll always be very simple. They'll just say something like, oh, well, you know, like what else can you do? You know, like you got to, you know, deal with the hands you dealt, or, you know, just enjoy yourself, just be positive. What else are you going to do? But behind that, there is a lot of them having to actually face and deal with that pain and emotion, and then, you know, steadily learn to direct it in that positive direction. It didn't come overnight. It's something that comes with practice. That's why I'm a big believer in competition, sports, esports being a great way to help you guys, to help me learn to direct your emotion and passion. Because unlike a lot of things in modern life, a lot of jobs, there's a very clear, you just lost, you're inadequate. You're constantly faced with that. Whereas in a lot of other things in life, it's never as clear cut as, well, you're just wrong. You know, you lost, you lose the game. So I don't know. I just think it's really cool, this idea of hanging on to that, developing it, feeding your rage into the fire, and not really letting it turn into a huge wildfire, foaming at the mouth, swearing at everyone and calling them all pieces of shit. So anyway, guys, hopefully you enjoyed me talking about this. I wrote like a whole bunch of notes last night. I was just thinking about all this. And I think, I talked about everything. So anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed it. Shout out your questions in chat. I know I haven't been answering YouTube comments for a while because I've just been so busy. Going to try and actually answer the YouTube comments on this video and do that a little bit more as well. So hopefully you guys enjoyed watching. Thanks for hanging out. Tomorrow I'll be back with another build order daily, most likely. Don't forget to send in replays for ICFAR for next week as well. It's going to be no micro. Interpret that as you will. Lots of A-moving units. Actually, it's funny because it's a lot like the mutator in co-op at the moment. The microtransactions one, where you actually have to pay resources every time you give a unit a command. So every time you like do some stutter step and your bank just drains. Like you cannot stutter step. You can't do fancy micro. So that's pretty cool. Anyway, guys, thanks for hanging out. Appreciate the company. Don't forget to hug a watermelon, kick a walrus, and of course, punch a penguin in the cankle. I'll catch you guys next time. Goodbye and good night.